Welcome to Storyflix. In this video, we will explain A Stray Goat. This movie tells the story of a boy who befriends a bullied classmate whose father has been accused of murder. When their togetherness grows closer, will the seeds of love grow between them? And can they prove the injustice that has happened? Let's find out in A Stray Goat. A Stray Goat begins in winter, where a young man named Min Sik is on his way to Gyeongsang, a small town which is his father's hometown. Min Sik and his family plan to move and settle in Gyeongsang. Having not visited his hometown for a long time, Min Sik's father seems confused when deciding the right direction, so he asks a middle-aged man who happens to be passing on the road they are going through. After telling his family the right way to go to Gyeongsang City, the middle-aged man immediately went to drive his car. Arriving in the city of Gyeongsang, Min Sik's father, who works as a priest, intends to reopen the church that has long been abandoned by the residents of Gyeongsang City. The next day, Min Sik is driven to school by his father. Knowing that Min Sik is a student who often causes trouble at his old school, his father warns him not to get into any trouble at school and focus on studying to graduate with good grades. Arriving at school, like a transfer student in general, Min Sik was asked by his teacher to introduce himself in front of the class. He then introduces himself to his classmates as a new transfer student from Suwon. In class, Min Sik's attention is immediately drawn to a quiet and aloof girl named Yijoos. Yijoos is often bullied by her classmates, so she has no friends. One of the delinquents in class tells Min Sik not to be friends with Yijoos because it will only cause trouble for him. The delinquent students always bullied Yijoos because her father was the accused in a murder case. Even though Yijoos' father is proven innocent and has a strong alibi, the residents of Gyeongsang City still believe that her father is the perpetrator of the murder. Despite his reluctance, Min Sik is forced to befriend the delinquent students in his class because they find out about him getting into trouble and being a delinquent student while still at school in Suwon. Not wanting to get into trouble, Min Sik can't help but be friends with them. As the days go by, Min Sik occasionally steals glances at Yijoos, who is always aloof. Despite knowing that Yijoos is always being bullied, Min Sik can't do anything about it and just lets it go. The delinquent students ask Min Sik to steal money at a hardware store one day. He is forced to comply with their request because he thinks it will keep him out of trouble. However, his actions were caught by the shop owner. Elsewhere, Min Sik's parents are seen distributing flyers inviting residents to come back to church for worship. They then entered a cosmetic shop and gave flyers to the woman who owned the shop. However, when Min Sik's father starts preaching, the woman immediately stops him and asks them to leave. Before leaving, Min Sik's mother buys a lip balm because she feels bad for the shop owner, who looks stern and grumpy when she finds out that they came only to give a brochure containing an invitation to church. Meanwhile, because Min Sik was caught stealing money by the hardware store owner, the bad boys then punished Min Sik by telling him to take Yijoos' hand and take her home. Although Min Sik was hesitant at first, but he decided to take Yijoos' hand and drive her home. Arriving at Yijoos' house, Min Sik is greeted by Yijoos' father, and he kindly tells Min Sik to come in and invites him to eat together. The delinquent students who waited for Min Sik outside then called him, but received no answer. Not long after, the window of Yijoos' house was pelted with stones. The scene then switches and shows the service atmosphere at the church led by Min Sik's father. The congregation seemed serious when listening to the lecture delivered by Min Sik's father. Worship at the church went smoothly even though not many people came to church. Elsewhere, Min Sik is seen playing soccer with his friends. Because he heads the ball too hard, the ball is thrown into the forest. While Min Sik is looking for a ball in the bushes, he stumbles upon a stray goat trapped in the hole. He doesn't necessarily help the little goat and just leaves him alone. In the afternoon, Min Sik passes by the hardware store he went to yesterday and intends to return the money he stole. But apparently the shop was closed. After that, he crosses paths with Yijoos, then invites her to eat together. Min Sik then gives Yijoos the lip balm her mother had bought at the cosmetic shop, saying he's never used it. Yijoos smiles happily and thanks Min Sik for the gift. Not long after, Min Sik gets a call from someone asking him to come to the police station. Arriving at the police station, Min Sik is named a suspect for the theft at the hardware store. At first, Min Sik wants to defend himself, but the delinquent students have already testified that they only helped Min Sik escape and were not involved in the theft. Min-sik doesn't move at all and finally admits his mistake. Min-sik's father looks very angry and scolds him all the way because his actions have humiliated his pride. Min-sik can only look down and apologize to his father for his crime. The next day, Min-sik returns to school and meets Yijoo, where he then hands her a packet of snacks. While in class, Min-sik sees Yijoo being bullied by one of the bad boys who snatched the snack Min-sik gave her, then spilled it on the table, hitting Yijoo's shirt. But Min-sik doesn't do anything and just lets it go. While trying to clean the food stains on her shirt, Yijoo looks so sad that she let the bad boys bully her and snatch the snacks that Min-sik gave that meant so much to her. On her way home from school, Yijoo meets Min-sik, helping his parents distribute flyers regarding worship activities at the church. Yijoo then asks if she's allowed to enter the church, and Min-sik of course lets her. Long story short, Yijoo ends up going to the church accompanied by Min-sik. Yijoo then meets one of the residents of Goseong who doesn't seem to like her presence. After the service, Min-sik then introduces Yijoo to his parents, where his father looks happy that Min-sik finally invited one of his schoolmates to church. However, after learning about the rumors circulating about Yijoo's father, suddenly Min-sik's father's attitude, which had greeted Yijoo warmly, turned cold and then scolded Min-sik because he thought Yijoo's presence could have a bad impact for the church. Min-sik's mother tries to advise her husband by saying that Yijoo is completely innocent and doesn't have to share the guilt that her father has done. Shortly afterwards, Yijoo was bullied again by delinquent students. But this time Min-sik doesn't stay silent and goes forward valiantly to defend Yijoo, even though in the end he and Yijoo are beaten by the bad boys. Min-sik then takes Yijoo away and leads her into the forest where he once found a wild goat trapped in a hole. When Min-sik and Yijoo come to the hole, the wild goat is still there. They both took the wild goat out of there and tied it to a tree. They then take a walk at the edge of the forest while enjoying the beautiful scenery, which even Yijoo, born and lived there, has not seen for years. On their way home, Min-sik and Yijoo pass a house that has a goat farm and think that the goats must have come from there. They then plan to buy warm clothes for the wild goat so that the goat doesn't get cold. After putting warm clothes on the wild goat, Min-sik and Yijoo plan to take the goat home. But then, they run into the owner of the farmhouse who recognizes that the goat Yijoo brought is his. However, Yijoo is adamant that she doesn't want to hand the goat over to the man. Seeing this, Min-sik then says that he will buy the goat and will give the money tomorrow. The man finally agreed. Since then, Min-sik and Yijoo's relationship has grown closer. One day, Min-sik takes Yijoo to church again. But it turns out that day is the anniversary of the death of Soo Jin, the little girl who was killed some time ago, where Yijoo's father is considered the killer. Knowing this, Yijoo rushes off because all the attention is on her. Min-sik then chases after Yijoo and apologizes to her because he didn't know that his father and the church members would commemorate the anniversary of Soo Jin's death. Min-sik then tries to calm Yijoo down and says that her father wasn't Soo Jin's killer. Min-sik then promises to catch the real culprit and clear her father's name. But Yijoo doesn't say anything and immediately leaves Min-sik. After that, Min-sik steals his mother's money and church donation money to redeem the stray goat according to the agreement they made with the livestock owner. A few days later, Yijoo is seen going to a salon to cut and change her hairstyle. However, while at school, Yijoo is again bullied by delinquent students who insult her hairstyle. Seeing Yijoo being bullied, Min-sik then helps her and attacks one of the delinquent students. But Min-sik's resistance actually causes him to become the target of bullying, where the delinquent students then beat him. Knowing that Min-sik brought a lot of money, the bad boys took the money and left immediately. Even though the money was planned to be used by Min-sik to redeem the wild goat to make Yijoo happy. Seeing Min-sik battered and losing his money, Yijoo stands still and leaves him alone. Yijoo then goes alone to the goat owner and says they don't have the money to pay for the goat. Yijoo persists in wanting to take the wild goat because it is so precious to her. On the other hand, Min-sik realized that Yijoo was disappointed in him and then rushed to find the bad boys to get his money back. After getting his money back, Min-sik rushes over to the man who owns the goats at his house. But the man wasn't there. Min-sik then goes to the forest's edge, where they tie up the wild goat and is shocked to see Yijoo and the man copulating. Min-sik thinks that Yijoo deliberately offered herself to the man as a ransom for the wild goat. But in reality, Yijoo had been raped by that man. Min-sik, who saw this from a distance, then ran away. Meanwhile, Yijoo, who knows that Min-sik left her, can only cry bitterly. The next day, Yijoo goes to school as usual. But she doesn't find Min-sik there. She takes the stray goat everywhere she goes, including visiting the church, just to see Min-sik. Everyone looks at Yijoo with scornful eyes as she walks in with a shabby appearance and dirty shoes. Realizing that Yijoo came to church just to meet him, Min-sik immediately looks away from her. Knowing that Min-sik doesn't want to see her again, Yijoo can only look down sadly and walk away. While walking towards the church door, Yijoo meets the goat owner and looks at him with a look full of anger. But the man looks back at Yijoo with a sneer. Yijoo then cries sadly as she takes the wild goat with her. Yijoo had no idea that Min-sik would just ignore her after everything they've been through together. She then sits alone at the bus stop with her stray goat. But not long after, the wild goat suddenly ran away somewhere. Yijoo tries to find the goat everywhere until she runs into the dark and never returns. Min-sik returns to school the next day and realizes that Yijoo isn't there. After that, he goes to the goat owner's house and deliberately opens the goat cage so that all the goats escape from there. Min-sik tries to find Yijoo's whereabouts, but he only finds the stray goat running around in the fields. He then chases after the goat, but suddenly he falls down. Min-sik then turns around and lies down, looking at the clear winter sky. Not long after, he feels the snowflakes falling on his face and instantly, it snows in Goseong, which is something rare in the city and the film ends. The moral of this film is that we should not judge someone by excluding them from society, even if it is proven that that person has made a mistake, because we are also not completely good and perfect people. Because every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future.